After 7. Now, tolerance in the political arena came under sharp focus at yesterday's annual Ahmed Kathrada conference in Johannesburg. Employment Equity Act is one of the subjects that was tackled. Sipho Pityana gave a worded speech on the issue at the conference, and he joined us in studio to give us more insight on some of the issues that were raised. It's so good to have you. Welcome to Morning Live.
Thank you very much, Leon, and to your viewers.
All right, so it's been 17 years since the Employment Equity Bill was introduced.
Yes.
What would you say have been some of its major achievements?
Well, first of all, I think that it's important for us to remember that transformation is a constitutional imperative. It's a mandate emanating from the Constitution. The vision of the Constitution is to ensure that we have a non-racial, non-sexist and equitable society. In fact, we have a society that proscribes discrimination on various grounds, including race, gender, sexual orientation, etc. What we were presented with at the conference in respect of what prevails in the workplace reveals a tale of two cities, that in fact the push for transformation tends to be a lot more enthusiastically driven in the public sector, and that there's a great deal of lackluster approach and hesitant approach in the private sector, where the patterns of the previous apartheid dispensation are quite preeminent. So the focus of the conversation tended to look at how then do we deal with that phenomenon there.
Yeah.
The statistics that were presented to us by the Commission on Employment Equity suggest that you still have high levels of concentration at leadership level by white managers, and that where the designated groups, which include women, black people with disability, etc., are taken on, there's a racial undercurrent that characterizes that.
Yeah. That
in fact, the greater beneficiaries of employment equity have been white females, and where disabilities have been targeted, it tended to be white disabled people. So that suggests that there's something the matter going on there.
Yeah.
Another disturbing revelation that came from that report was that in periods of retrenchments, people from designated group, particularly black people, tend to be greater victims of retrenchments. If you look at the turn of the economy for the worst in 2008, the employment equity trends that were making progress suddenly took a turn in a negative direction.
Yeah.
So clearly there's a problem there. One of the key things that we need to be looking at is whether the private sector, in its demonstration of preference for foreign employees, especially in senior positions, isn't fanning the fires of xenophobia, because there's growing resentment and the feeling that trends suggest that there is preference also for employment of foreigners and overlooking of locals, even where skilled locals are available. So all of that was a subject of debate and conversation.
It seems that there were a lot of flaws. I mean,
yes.
when you look into this, how would you like to see things changing going forward? What needs to change so that we see a bigger representation and more employment equity in South Africa?
Well, the problem with the report, of course, is that it's a quantitative report. They look at the numbers. It doesn't tell the story of why is it that this is happening. There's a lot of anecdotal evidence that is emerging that suggests pigeonholing, which means that you have people in the corporate sector, black people put in only in certain areas of operation, overlooking and the failure to promote appropriately, even where people have skills or have qualifications. So what has been the recommendation that came very strongly there is that the Minister of Labour should commission the Commission for Employment Equity to do a more qualitative research looking at getting the stories of in these sectors, so that we bring these matters above board. And secondly, that there should be an engagement with professional associations that are active in this area, to have a conversation with them as to how we can work together to deal with this.
Sipho, I have to wrap this interview, which is so sad, but I have to bring up the Matthews Posa incident, because that's
Sure.
what people are talking about at the moment. Matthews Posa making some scathing comments during this conference, talking about that the ANC's constant failure to implement policies, talking about the National Development Plan as one of the examples, and constantly blaming apartheid. He says we're running out of excuses and we shouldn't be blaming apartheid. We need to look forward and stop looking backwards. What do you make of this? I mean, is this warranted?
Yes, it is warranted. I heard on the radio that people are saying that Matthew Posa is raising this issue now that is out of the leadership of the ANC. In fact, that's not true. He's been raising these issues even then. I've been in discussions with quite a number of leading figures in the ANC who are concerned about the fact that there is a measure of culpability in the post-apartheid government that has resulted in some of the problems. For instance, the crisis in education is not just a legacy of apartheid. There's a great deal of mismanagement of that. The crisis in the health sector is part of that. As CASAC, we are involved with a number of NGOs in pushing for a proper implementation of good policies that are there in the Eastern Cape area around public health. So clearly there are certain things that have been done and have been done wrongly and have landed us where we are. So we need to do some introspection to look at where the faults are within the way government has carried out some of the programs. Yeah. And that in a context which acknowledges that there's been a lot of good things that have been done by government, but we can't just blame apartheid and say that all of that is of what is happening today is just a result of an apartheid dispensation, because we're not going to find answers and solutions to the problems that we face. Okay, so the fact that he came in and said that many may think I'm a has-been politician and I'm bitter about what I'm saying and I'm being scathing towards the ANC, it's not true. I mean, you are agreeing with him. I agree with him. I mean, it doesn't. Okay. You don't have to be active in politics to pursue your civic duty. It is civic duty of all of us as citizens of this country to ensure that we have a society and a country that performs well, and a government that is efficient and effective in executing its policies and programs. Yeah, I mean, a lot of people are against affirmative action as well. They say that it's an unfair practice and that some skilled black people don't get the jobs and those that are rather politically connected get the jobs instead. And that, it's reverse racism. These are just some of the criticisms that are thrown at it. Yeah. What is your response, very quickly? I think it's misplaced commentary. Affirmative action as in the law clearly says that you must identify people from designated group who are suitably qualified, who have the competencies to do the job. If you do it differently, you're undermining efficiencies in the economy, and that clearly is not the intention. And there's provisions in the law to actually act against some of the examples that you're talking about. As a country, we can't afford to effect reverse racism because we are enjoined by the Constitution to develop and to deliver a non-racial society that is free from discrimination. Yeah. So clearly, those practices are deviant of the policy intentions around affirmative action. All right, let's leave it there. Sipho Pityana, thank you very much for talking to us here on Morning Live, talking about the Ahmed Kathrada conference that's currently underway. Very interesting issues that are being discussed there. Let's take